The September issue of Down East magazine is out, and it features the annual Best of Maine list. You'll find recommendations from all over the state on where to eat, drink, shop, stay, unwind, and a whole lot more.
Down East readers weighed in with their picks, and the magazine's editors added some of their own. Editor-in-Chief Brian Kevin guided us through some of the picks, starting with one from the food category, Soul Food Paradise at the Fork Food Lab in Portland.
So this is a really small takeout operation. A fellow named Martin Beaver started it up. I think the photos here probably speak to themselves. This was a nomination from our food and drink editor who's crazy about this place. I feel like when we have extolled food this year, it's been like 90% comfort food because it's been that kind of year. So braised oxtail and macaroni and cheese and fried chicken and just comfort food par excellence based on recipes that Beaver's mother used to cook.
One of your choices for the best in Maine from the shopping and lifestyle category is Triple Mountain Model Horses in Hiram.
So this is a reader pick that we didn't know a lot about. And as it was doing really well in the reader survey, we were like, we should go check that out. And then it became an editor's pick as well. I'm a sucker for anybody who has an obscure thing that they're really passionate about. And that explains Aleda Towle, who runs Triple Mountain Model Horses. And she makes the point that there's a little bit of a stigma attached to her hobby, which is absurd in an era when grown adults are collecting like Avengers, action figures and Pokemon cards. You go in there, even if you're not a collector of model horses, and few of us are, the place is visually crazy. There's so much of this, and you're going to find a gift. You're going to find something for a kid in your life, and you're going to be won over by her enthusiasm for this.
From the travel category, a selection I really like, the Mount Kineo Golf Course on Moosehead Lake.
We have a golfer on our edit staff for the first time in a long time, and assistant editor Adrian says she's a bad golfer, but she's in it for the scenery. And if you're like Adrian, there is very little that can beat the majesty kind of Mount Kineo rising over their fairways up on Moosehead.
Yeah, spectacular scenery. Let's look at some of the articles that are elsewhere in the issue, including one on the Maine Oyster Trail, which is a fairly new phenomenon and something that is really cool.
It's gotten a recent relaunch. It was started by the Maine Aquaculture Association, the UMaine Extension, a handful of other groups and agencies to try and encourage people to get out and taste Maine oysters and learn about Maine oysters, not just at restaurants and raw bars, but also at farms and taking oyster tours. So they kind of modeled it after the Maine Beer Trail, which has been a huge success, Maine Craft Beer Trail. And you can go out, you can taste the oysters, you can get a tour, you register your visit, and you get swag. So I'm well on my way to getting a tote bag with, I want to say I have to hit 20 different oyster purveyors this year.
And you have a certain passion for this subject. In fact, you write in your editor's note that you yourself have grown some oysters.
I was a very dilettante oyster grower in my former home of Damascata, where it's obviously a very big deal. I did like a community gardening program for 4 years, grew few hundred oysters every couple of years that I took to parties, made me maybe somewhat popular. Maybe not very popular, but it was a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, it's such an explosive part of this state, and there's so much to learn, so much to taste. Getting into the differences from one sort of grower to another is kind of a blast.
And keeping with the oyster theme, there's a nice long profile that you wrote about Abby Barrows, who has an oyster growing operation in her hometown of Deer Isle.
Yeah, Long Cove Sea Farm it's called. And I was very lucky to spend a little while with Abby Barrows, who's an amazing, well-traveled, really smart person who's just emblematic of the kind of folks in Maine who are getting into the oyster scene.
And what's particularly interesting about what she does is, on the one hand, she's growing oysters, but she also has a keen interest in exploring a really difficult, challenging issue, and that is how to deal with microplastic pollution in our oceans.
That's what made Barrows interesting to us. Not only are her oysters great and grown in a really scenic, beautiful spot, but she is a leading researcher in the field of microplastics, this sort of pollution that comes from all of our plastic objects that shed tiny little fibers and particles, and the ways that those affect the ecosystem and animal health, shellfish health, and possibly human health. So she's done a lot of work in that area, and now she's turning some of her attention to helping reinvent the gear, the very plastic heavy gear that aquaculturists in Maine use in an effort to try and do her part to kind of stem some of that microplastic pollution. So she had a lot to say about that. It was a really interesting hangout.
You will find all of those stories and more in the September issue of Down East, on sale now.